I'm gonna go with this one. Hi. Welcome to another episode of the Mighty Emotions podcast. I hope the filter on this doesn't throw you off as much as it is throwing me off. But I'm going live today for the last podcast of 2022. Guys, this is incredible that we have made it to the end of 2022 and we are headed into 2023. I have so many things planned. I'll just give you a sneak peek because I can't keep a secret. I will be coming out with audio courses via a subscription podcast. So you'll be able to get that on a monthly basis. Each month will have a different theme. I know the first thing that we're going to be talking about is healing the narcissistic mother wound. And I'm really excited to share this information. I've been having so many conversations with people who struggle with this mother-daughter or mother-son relationship where, you're dealing with a narcissistic mother. And I know what that's like. So that's going to be one of the topics. One month we're going to dive into boundaries. One month we're going to dive into codependency, specifically covert codependency. Like if you don't realize that you're codependent, like I didn't realize for a really long time, going to dive into all of that, how it impacts your life, how you can heal it. So really excited for audio courses to come out next year, so stay tuned for that. And I will finally be coming out with my course, my Getting Back to You course. Right now, this year I had it as a signature program one-on-one, but my time is so limited right now with my daughter and all the other things I'm juggling. And I want to be able to help and reach more people and give more resources. So that course is going to be coming out. It's going to be the same structure as my signature program, 8 modules. And it's going to be drip fed to you each week. So there will be no binging it. You will get one new episode each week. Everyone will launch in the same kind of cohort, and that'll be coming out early next year as well. So working on a lot of things, really excited to bring them to you. We'll still keep doing the podcast, still be posting on Instagram, still chatting with you guys in the DMs. Also, before the year is even over, I have a workshop coming up with my girl Tyler. So stay tuned for all the information on that. We are going to keep doing this in 2023 and beyond, because the more of us that can be emotionally resilient, the healthier our society is going to be, right? The healthier our families, our communities, our lives are going to be. And it's the reason why I do all this work, is because I know how hopeless it can feel to have all these emotions, to have all these stories, to not know what to do with it, to feel like there's nothing you can do about it. And to have learned that there is so much we actually can do about it, and to be able to teach that is what keeps me going, right? This work is just to empower you to be your most empowered version of yourself. And all of us have that empowered version of ourselves within us. And so if we can go from disempowered to empowered, like, our lives, our worlds, our societies can shift and change, which is what we're all trying to do. Anyway, so that was rambly, but all that to say, a lot of exciting things are coming in 2023. And thank you to everyone who has connected with me in this year. And I'm excited to keep that connection going in next year. So today, there's no homework, there's no assignment, there's no podcast notes. I just wanted to come and talk to you about something to kind of expand upon something that I've been talking about a lot on my platform recently, which is the stories that we tell ourselves, internal stories. This is known by different terms: our programming, our subconscious programming, internal narratives, whatever it is, right? Limiting beliefs. There's lots of different ways that we talk about this. But I wanted to come on and share with you like the foundational concept behind this. Because if this is new to you and you're not really sure, what this means, what this looks like, how to understand this, I want you to understand really that it's far simpler than we make it out to be, right? Now, our stories, our internal narratives, has to do with our perception. And I'm going to make the distinction between our perception and our perspective, okay? Our perspective is how we're viewing, like, in what way we're viewing something, okay? So think of perspective like bird's eye view perspective, or you're looking up at something, or you're looking at something from a side view, right? So that's our perspective. It's like the way that we're looking at something. So to use a tangible example, if you meet a person, right, your perspective of them is going to be based on what they're presenting to you. So, are you meeting them at a certain time of day? Are you, how are they dressed? How are they speaking? What's their energy like? Their aura, right? That's going to impact your perspective. That's going to impact the way that you're viewing them in that moment. Okay? And that can shift moment to moment. Like if you meet someone for the first time and they're dressed a certain way, you have this perspective that you're getting this perspective of them when they're in a good mood and they're, feeling good. And then you might get a different perspective of them when they come around and they're not in such a good mood and they're not feeling so well and they're not dressed as well. So that's kind of our perspective. Our perception is where our stories come into play. And our perception is how we're interpreting what we're seeing, what we're taking in. Okay? So that's if I see if a person approaches me, am I perceiving them as a threat or am I perceiving them as somebody that's safe? That's not based on what they're showing me. That's based on my internal interpretations of people, my mental models of what somebody that looks like that what somebody that looks like that is. Like, what are the characteristics that I've put on somebody that looks like that? Our perception is what comes into play when things like racism and just judging people in different ways, right? Because we have these internalized stories, narratives about what this group of people or what this person is like before they've even shared who they are with us, right? So our perception and our perspective is very, very different. Our perspective is just going to be based on the moment, what we're seeing, how we're seeing it, what's our mood, what's their mood. Our perception, it goes a lot deeper. And this is going to be really important to know if you're somebody that has been called too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, right? I've been called all of these things, by the way. So if you're somebody that feels really strongly, feels really deeply, perceives things a certain way, this is going to be really important to know the difference in perception. There are two differences in perception. There is subjective perception and objective perception. All of us have the ability to perceive things in these two ways, subjectively and objectively. Think of it like right brain subjective, left brain objective, right? And different people kind of veer more to one side or the other. So there's people who are really creative and imaginative and artistic. They lean more right brain, they lean more subjective, right? Subjective is just our individualized ability to imagine and explore and create, right? It's important to have this ability, okay? Then there's the objective part where you're a little bit more quantitative, a little bit more logical, a little bit more left brain, a little bit more, tangible, okay? So that's on an individualized level. But objectivity is also kind of a collective level, a collective consensus. So the sky is blue. We all agree, we all come together and agree that objectively the sky is blue. So that's just what we think. That's what we believe. The sky is blue. Now, is the sky beautiful or is the sky not beautiful? That's subjective. That's just our internal opinion or interpretation of something. And sometimes people put their subjective opinions on us and we internalize that as an objective fact because it came from someone else, right? So it's really important when we're dealing with our internal stories, our internal narratives, our feelings, that we understand that we are able to perceive things as subjective and objective. And when we perceive things too subjectively, that can kind of veer us further and further away from reality, which is more objective, which is more tangible. We collectively agree that this is the reality, and so when we're too subjective, we're too creative, we're too artistic, we're too imaginative, sometimes we veer further and further away from reality, and that is when our emotions kind of come to the surface, our uncomfortable emotions can come to the surface to bring our attention and our awareness to this. So to give you an example, which I'm going to start doing more of this because some of these concepts can be a little confusing. An example, I'm going to give you a sentence or a couple sentences and then explain to you the different perceptions, okay? Today is Thursday. It's a beautiful, gorgeous day. The sun is shining, the sky is blue, and it's just the most wonderful day that you'll ever experience, okay? So there's subjective and objective perceptions within what I just said, okay? Today is Thursday. Objective. We agree. The calendar says it's Thursday. We agree that it's Thursday. That's just a fact. We're not disputing that. That's not an opinion. It's Thursday, okay? The sun is shining. The sky is blue. Where I am, the sun is shining and the sky is blue and there's not a cloud in the sky. The sky is clear. That's something that I'm seeing with my eyes. I'm perceiving with my five senses or my eyesight at least. Okay, we all agree. You know, when the sky looks like that, it's clear, the sun is shining, or the sun's not shining. That's just objective fact. It is a beautiful, gorgeous day. It is the best day that I've ever experienced. That is subjective. That is my opinion. That is where I'm filling in the gaps to describe the objective fact that it's a sunny, clear day. Because somebody else might experience that sunny, clear day differently. Okay? So there is always the objective perspective and the subjective perspective when we are looking at our internal stories. I'll use this I'll use an example with relationships. Okay, my husband and I are, I feel disconnected. Not happening right now, but it happens in relationships. We've both been so busy. We're both so tired. I try talking to him. He brushes me off. I feel hurt. I feel unheard. I feel unappreciated. I feel unvalued. I think that he doesn't like me. Now you see the story that I just created there from the objective situation. The objective facts, just the facts, right? We're not describing them. We're just the facts of the story, the who, what, where, when, why. Where the characters in the story are me and my husband. The events in the story are we're tired. We are, foggy. We're not sleeping well. I go to speak to him and he brushes me off. So that is objective. Those are just the things that have happened. Now, the subjective comes in when I say, well, I feel like he doesn't care about me. That's subjective. That's my mind creating an interpretation of what his behavior means. And that's where we need to just become more aware, right? Especially when we're very intuitive and sensitive people, we tend to lean more on the subjective side, like I said. And the subjective side is what kind of goes away or separates from reality. Okay? So it's about knowing what's subjective and what's objective. What's objective is that I feel sad. Sadness is showing up for me. That's objective. That's really happening, right? That's not an opinion. That's something that I'm experiencing. However, the story about why he's behaving that way, why I feel sad, that's when the subjectivity comes into play. And subjectivity is really important when we're creating narratives, stories, films, music, art. It's very, very important when we're creating anything, right? We're building a business. We're, doing something with our kids. We're playing. We're planning, to go on an adventure or a vacation with our family. That's where our creativity and our imagination is so important, right? We are using that in a positive way. But when it turns against us is when we start to confuse reality with our subjective thoughts. Okay? So when I say look at the story, look at the characters in your story, right? When you look at how you're feeling, that's objective. Like, acknowledge that that's really happening to you. But when you start to get into why you're feeling that way, understand that if you're not familiar with an emotional resilience practice, you probably have a warped understanding of what causes our emotions to arise. And this isn't to criticize, because this is how society-wide our emotions are taught, right? This person hurt your feelings, they're the reason you're sad, right? When really that sadness is there because of a lack of connection. That sadness is there because something meaningful, there's a void within us. It's always internal. Our emotions are always arising for an internal reason. The minute we start to see our emotions arising as an external reason, that's when we need to pause and assess what's objective in this and what's subjective in this. Did I just create this, right? Did I just decide that this means this? We're always doing it, by the way. That's how our brains work, right? We do it automatically, and some of us do it more than others. And one thing I'll add is that when you have grown up with a lot of trauma, like I have, you tend to be more subjective because that is how we cope with our trauma when we don't know how to process our emotions. We cope with it by getting out of our reality, escaping into fantasy, daydreaming, wishing we were somewhere else. Okay? That's when we become super subjective in thinking, right? A lot of us are wired this way, but it really gets honed in, chiseled into us when we have lived through traumatic experiences and haven't received any kind of support to process it. And that's why coaching and therapy is so helpful, because it brings us back into alignment with reality. It helps us separate the objective and the subjective, the oil and the water. It helps us figure out what's really happening to us, what's our real experience, what lessons are arising from this that we need to work with, and what we have invented or fabricated or created that isn't serving us. Okay? And that's usually in the subjective category. So this is really what I want you to take away from this. Okay? When we're talking about looking at our stories, our internal stories, we need to look at the elements of the story. Who are the characters in the story? What is happening in the story objectively? What are the facts? Okay? And then what are our interpretations of the story? What are we filling in? Where are the gaps we're filling in? So if I go back to the situation with my husband, he and I are the characters, okay? The facts are maybe we had an argument. Maybe we both yelled at each other, okay? The subjective piece in my mind, and in his mind, because we're always doing it as human beings, is why did that argument happen? What was the reason? What did I do? What did he do? What do I feel? What did he feel? Okay? And not even what did I do and what did he feel, but why did I feel this way? Why did he feel this way? The why is the subjective piece. And that is the piece that we really need to challenge and really become aware of our perception. And saying, okay, this is what I've created and it's not serving me. Okay? How can I get more objective about this? How can I look at this as more factually, right? And we do that by understanding what each of our emotions is coming up to make us aware of, okay? Understanding our underlying needs, understanding our values and why something matters to us, because that's going to impact our perception as well, okay? So if I'm somebody that values honesty, when someone's being dishonest to me, that's going to bring up a lot of stuff, right? And it's going to be a lot of stories, a lot of emotions. I'm going to I'm going to build out a whole narrative around that person for that one moment that they were dishonest to me, because honesty really matters to me. And that I'm no longer staying in that moment, but I've decided that this is how I'm going to perceive them for the rest of our time interacting together. And that is the trap that we can fall into in perception. So be mindful that you maybe are really creative and expressive and artistic, and that your mind works like that, like magic. And when these emotions are arising, it's important to know that so you can say, okay, Giselle, what part of this did I create? What part of this story did I invent? Here are the things that have happened. Here are the things I need to deal with and work with in the real world, in the tangible world, the objective pieces of this. And then here are the subjective pieces, and are they aligned with my reality? Do they match the objective pieces? Okay? If my subjective interpretations of a situation match the objective facts of the situation, then the emotions are going to align. They're going to make sense. But if there's a dissonance, if there's a friction, then there's something that I need to look at in that narrative. Is this really what's going on or not? Okay, just become aware of the two perceptions. Become aware of when you're veering too much into the story, too much into the subjective piece, and try to come back to, okay, how can I make this tangible? If I think that this person feels this way, can I ask them how they feel? Right? And if this person tells me they feel a certain way, what does that mean about me? Can I see that that is them as a separate person from me and it doesn't mean anything about me? Or is there a way that I've behaved that doesn't align with my values that I need to change? You know, there's a lot of kind of processing, right? Processing our emotions first physically and then mentally. And that is where someone like a therapist and a coach comes in to help us sift through the story and help us get to the objectivity and help us see where the stories that we've created are not serving us, and how can we come back into alignment with reality so that we can be present with ourselves, so that we can be present in our relationships, so that we can get our needs met, so that we can take care of ourselves, so that we can have fulfilling lives that align with our values. It's really, really important to get support with this. It's one thing to try and do it on our own, and there's a lot of work that we can do on our own. But I always suggest that you get support so that it makes the work on your own a little bit easier. This is a lot of kind of getting different perspectives, right? If I'm coming in from an outside perspective, I don't have all the emotions that you have. I can give you my perspective, which will change how you're looking at the situation, which will help you separate the subjective and the objective. But when we're in our own echo chamber, it can be really difficult to see. So it really requires a strong practice. It really requires slowing down, journaling, writing it out, and seeking out the answers, being intentional. Okay, what's objective here? What's subjective here? And taking our time with it and letting it come when it comes. If it doesn't come right away because we're still in the physical processing phase, that's okay too. That's okay too. We don't need to rush this. Right? We need to give our bodies time to digest what we're feeling so that we can catch up mentally and figure out, okay, what is the lesson here? What is the action that I need to take here that's going to serve me? Okay? So I just wanted to leave you with that last podcast of the year, to think about that. Think about that. Are you more of a subjective person? And honestly, if you're on my page, you probably are, because I am, right? I can create worlds in my mind and it serves me in a lot of ways, but not all the time in my everyday life and dealings with others, right? Sometimes I have to go, wait a minute, am I in my own world or am I in the world that I'm sharing with these other people, right? Are they just characters in my story or am I living presently? And it's active work, it's practice. But the beautiful part is that our emotions will always bring it to our awareness. When that discomfort arises, when that frustration arises, it's like, wait a minute. Am I in acceptance right now? Right? Am I aligned with reality? Am I seeing things for what they really are? There's a time to be objective. There's a time to be subjective. There's a time for everything, right? So working with our emotions, learning how to work with our emotions is going to help us with our perception. And our perception, how we see the world, is going to impact how we show up in the world, how we interact with the world. And that is what's going to lead us to have the lives that we want, fulfilling, enriching lives, fulfilling and enriching relationships. When that perception is aligned, it's going to change the way that we live our lives and feel about ourselves and others. So this is really critical, foundational stuff to understand. And I'm going to bring some more foundational videos in the next year, as well as in my subscription podcast, where I'm going to teach deeply on each of these things, right? So if you want to learn more and go deeper, that's coming as well, because there's a lot I could say about this. But for now, just become aware of these two different perceptions. Become aware of the story and then the tangible reality piece, and just kind of see like, oh, get curious with yourself. It's okay. There's no judgment. We're not trying to change ourselves. We're just trying to become more aware of it, because that's how we take control of it, right? We become the authors of our lives, the authors of these stories, and we live with more intention. Okay, and that is my hope for you in 2023 and beyond, is that you live with more intention, that you're gentle with yourself, that you're kind to yourself, and that you keep showing up and learning and applying and learning and applying and doing this work so that you can have the life you deserve. Okay? With that, I have loved you for journeying with me, and I'm excited to keep the journey going. I send you blessings and peace and love, and I hope that you are gentle with yourself today. I'll see you in the next one.